Hi guy, welcome back TV spoilers. Phyllis Summers has never been the type to stop at the right moment. For her, losing isn't just dropping around in a game, it's being stripped of control. Dragged from the role of manipulator into the position of someone judged, exposed, and pitied. And that obsession is exactly what pushes her into the most dangerous territory of all. One final scheme. One decisive strike meant to bring Newman Enterprises to its knees with an invisible weapon. Powerful enough to crack an empire-stolen artificial intelligence software. Phyllis convinces herself that if her blow is deep enough and ruthless enough, Victor Newman will have no way to recover. She tells herself this is the perfect moment to turn Victor's arrogance into weakness. To turn a technological threat into a blade driven straight into the heart of the Newman dynasty. But she forgets one brutal truth. Victor isn't merely a survivor of storm, she is the storm. And he has always known how to turn someone else's mistake into their sentence. Kane Ashby is part of that chessboard too. Even if the bond between him and Phyllis has never been clean, they may call each other partners. But beneath the surface they are simply two people raised by ambition and fear of being left behind, forgotten, powerless. Kane understands the force of AI, understands how it can crown anyone a king if they hold the controls, and how it can turn anyone into a prisoner if the truth breaks open. To Phyllis, AI isn't just a tool, it's her last chance to prove she can still make Genoa City tremble. But to Kane, everything carries the stench of calculation. He walks a thin line between greed and dread, between hunger for victory and the instinct to survive. In this world, colleague and ally are only fragile labels, easily torn apart the second one person's freedom is weighed against the other's downfall. While Phyllis is intoxicated by the belief that she's leading the war, Victor Newman quietly constructs a perfect trap. He doesn't respond with emotion. He doesn't charge into loud confrontations or give her the panic she expects. Instead, Victor treats this exactly like a modern battle of technology and power. The winner isn't the one who strikes first, but the one who gathers the proof to finish the enemy with the full force of the law and the public. Victor understands the AI threat too well, and he knows something else: his own hands are not spotless. Somewhere in his past are decisions that, if dragged into daylight, could detonate in ways even he can't fully predict. That is why he is careful. That is why he plays colder. He chooses to cooperate with the prosecutor, creating a ruthless, efficient alliance. Justice becomes the sword and Victor becomes the hand gripping the hilt. Piece by piece, the evidence is collected: every trace, every footprint, every hidden move, every click, every data access, every line of altered code is stacked into a complete picture, strong enough to transform Phyllis from attacker into defendant. Phyllis's arrest doesn't unfold like a tragic scene filled with pleading and tears. It hits like a dry slap of reality. Like an iron door slamming shut before she can even understand where she miscalculated. Genoa City is no stranger to scandal, but this one smells like an execution disguised as accountability. The news spreads fast, feeding on shock. A woman like Phyllis Summerswoe has walked through scandal after scandal and still kept her head high, who has survived betrayal and burned bridges without collapsing, who has long been treated as untouchable, now faces the very real possibility of prison for theft and computer fraud. This isn't a private war fought in living rooms and hotel corridors. This is a public courtroom. This is the place where Victor's power can be legalized into punishment. And this is where Phyllis begins to understand that every stain she has concealed for so long is about to be scrubbed clean with blood. The trial opens like a suffocating nightmare, as if all of Genoa City has stepped into one massive mirror reflecting who they really are. No one enters that courtroom with peace in their heart. People come to witness, to judge, to choose sides, to protect their reputations, to drag their enemies into the same mud. Phyllis sits in the defendant's chair with a pride she refuses to release. But the fire in her eyes isn't the same. She is forced to face a brutal reality. This is no longer a game of clever manipulation. This is a system. And systems are built to crush the people reckless enough to challenge them without protection. Secrets begin to surface like blades. The way Phyllis and Kane controlled the AI. The steps they took to infiltrate Newman Enterprises from within. The careful sabotage disguised as strategy and data analysis, all of it is laid out in front of the room. Every detail spoken aloud turns the atmosphere colder, heavier, as if the air itself is draining away. Phyllis realizes her plan is no longer a strike against Victor. It has become a noose tightening around her throat. The most terrifying part isn't being accused, it's being turned into a symbol of guilt. the face of someone who dared to unleash a dangerous technology into the bloodstream of a powerful company, someone who might have endangered an entire city's stability. And then Victor's own fear begins to take shape, his history. Because when people try to drag Phyllis down, they inevitably brush against the gray territory Victor himself once crossed. Questions start to rise, shadows of older choices begin to hover. If Phyllis is being prosecuted for using stolen AI, what exactly has Victor done in the past to counter threats like this? Did he ever test similar systems, manipulate outcomes, use technology to steer reality in his favor? One leak, one confirmed fragment, and Victor could shift from the man standing beside justice to the man swallowed by suspicion. Victor understands that better than anyone, because he knows the real enemy isn't Phyllis, it's the truth. Genoa City starts to split. People who once stood beside Phyllis are forced into impossible decisions. Defend her to preserve loyalty or abandon her to protect themselves. No one wants to be pulled into a full-scale war with the Newmans. But no one wants to be labeled a traitor if Phyllis truly falls. Silence becomes a weapon. A glance becomes a verdict. Even without words, everyone understands that choosing the wrong side right now can destroy careers, families, futures. Phyllis's case stops being personal. It becomes a fight over power, morality, and survival. In the middle of it all, Victoria becomes a pressure point. She isn't just a Newman, she is the face of the company's stability. If the AI scandal expands, if the public believes Newman Enterprises has been hijacked from within, everything Victoria has built could fracture. She cannot afford weakness. She cannot let emotions steer her. But she also cannot deny that the Newman name is being dragged through the dirt. Victoria stands trapped between public rage and Victor's expectations, between the duty to protect an empire and the fear that there are secrets in her family's past that can no longer be buried. And the harder she tries to appear unshaken, the more she feels like she's standing on a hanging bridge with the ropes snapping one by one. Adam Newman and Chelsea are not outside the storm either. They discuss the media articles that have exploded across town, stories that never fully state the crime outright, yet strongly imply Phyllis and Kane committed computer fraud using AI that seized control inside Newman Enterprises. Those headlines pour fuel on the fire. Adam knows media can become a dagger. Chelsea knows public opinion can turn a court case into a public execution. They can see the risk clearly. If this spreads, it won't only destroy Phyllis, it will scar Newman Enterprises too. But they also sense a colder truth. Victor may be using the media as pressure, forcing anyone who hesitates to pick a side faster, harder, with no room for doubt. The trial surges toward its peak as testimony and evidence push into the most sensitive territory. Phyllis realizes she can't survive on intelligence and instinct alone anymore. Everything she did is traced, logged, reinterpreted into the worst possible version of her intentions. And the darkest scenario becomes vivid. If Kane betrays her, she will fall in absolute isolation. Kane holds the missing pieces that can bury her deeper or pull her back with a single act of loyalty. But does Kane have the courage to stand with her when prison doors are already opening? Or will he do what survivors always do, step back, let someone else take the hit, and keep his own freedom intact? Phyllis exists in a volatile mix of rage and desperation. She feels cornered by the very traits she once believed were her greatest strengths: boldness, recklessness, the confidence that she understood Victor better than anyone. But Victor doesn't defeat her with raw power. Alana defeats her with patience. He lets her walk into the trap by herself. He lets her believe she's winning until she has no escape left. And inside Victor's silence, Phyllis hears the most terrifying reminder of all. In Genoa City, the person who falls doesn't just lose freedom, they lose identity. They lose trust. They lose the right to be seen as anything other than a cautionary tale. By the time the final judgment begins to take shape, the consequences have already spread beyond the courtroom. Relationships shift like broken ice drifting on a river. People who once moved together now look at each other like strangers. Enemies who once fought may be forced into alliances just to survive. Phyllis isn't only facing prison, she's facing the loss of everything she has ever clung to: influence, fear, the power to make others hesitate before crossing her. Genoa City is watching her as a warning, a message that anyone who dares to challenge the Newmans will pay. But the most terrifying part of all isn't simply whether Phyllis goes to prison. It's the question of who comes next. Because this case has opened a door no one can confidently shut, the door to AI secrets. To what Newman Enterprises has done and is still doing in the shadows to protect its dominance. If Victor cooperated with the prosecutor to destroy Phyllis, it means he is willing to drag the entire city into his game. And when the law becomes a weapon, the line between guilty and chosen victim disappears. The end of the trial is not the end of the story. It is only the closing of one chapter and the beginning of something worse. Phyllis may be convicted, but her collapse will create a power vacuum others will rush to fill. Kane may slip away or be pulled down with her. But either way, their connection is shattered beyond repair. Victoria may stabilize Newman Enterprises, but the cost could be her own safety in a city hunting for weakness. Adam and Chelsea may believe they are observers. Yet media storms and public fury never spare anyone. And Victor, even in victory, will face the most dangerous question of all: can he truly control the fallout if his own buried secrets rise? And just when everyone believes the verdict has finally sealed the storm, a new detail appears sharp, unexpected, like lightning ripping through a sky that pretended it was clearing. A trace connected to the AI doesn't stop with Phyllis and Kane. It points towards something Newman Enterprises did in the past, something no one has dared to say out loud in public. If that evidence comes forward, it could flip the entire case on its head, pulling Phyllis back from prison, while shoving Victor directly into the center of the chaos. And the only question left is this: who holds that proof? And who will they sacrifice first to save themselves? Kane Ashby has been moving through these past days, like a man trying to drag himself out of quicksand with bare hands only to feel the mud tighten. Every time he struggles, it isn't hunger or a lack of money that scares him, and it isn't an experience that makes him uneasy. The thing that's suffocating him is far more personal: the slow, grinding collapse of his private life, the hollow space where family used to be, now reduced to names that echo inside memory instead of living beside him. Maddie and Charlie aren't near him the way they once were, and Lily shows no real sign that she's ready to come back in the way he has quietly hoped for. Every time Kane thinks about his children, he feels like he's standing outside a locked door knowing exactly what he needs is on the other side, yet realizing he no longer has the right to walk in. A father can claim strength all he wants, but the moment he admits he's no longer the first person his children run to, no longer the one they reach for when they need safety, he understands the deepest kind of failure doesn't live in business or reputation. It lives in the unbearable feeling of being replaced in the hearts of the people he loves most. Kane tries to keep the calm, polished exterior he's always relied on, but the silence coming from his family drains him more than any public defeat ever could. He's exhausted by sleepless nights, by the phone that doesn't ring, by messages that get read and then left hanging. And beneath it all, a sharper fear begins to form: fear that if he doesn't find stability soon, he will lose the chance to make things right forever, lose the last fragile thread tying him to his children's lives. Victor Newman sees all of it with brutal clarity, like a predator catching the scent of blood even when the wounded animal tries to hide the injury beneath expensive fabric. Victor doesn't need to rush, because he understands that Kane is at his most vulnerable right now, desperate to be saved, terrified of being pulled even deeper. Victor studies him not with pity, but with the cold calculation of a man who has built an empire by turning other people's weakness into a doorway. He knows Kane isn't the kind of man who can be bought with a few sweet words, because Kane has always believed he could build his own future. But Victor also knows something far more important when a man is pushed to the edge. What he needs most isn't applause or status. It's certainty. Certainty for his children. Certainty that loss won't keep expanding until it consumes everything. Certainty that there's still a way to stand tall again. Victor doesn't attack Kane with threats. He approaches him with the one thing Kane is most likely to reach for when he's drowning: an offer that sounds like salvation. A secret deal, discreet and quiet, one that doesn't force Kane to humiliate himself publicly, yet has the power to change his life in a matter of days. Victor's terms are clean and sharp, like the edge of a knife. Kane will help Newman completely neutralize Phyllis's AI and provide evidence against her. In return, Victor will secure the financial future of Kane's children, and may even place Kane in an influential position inside a Newman subsidiary, far away from Jack Abbott, far away from the old wars that have left Kane bruised and worn down. It isn't just a job title. It's a promise of stability, a promise that Kane can become a worthy father again, a man with enough ground beneath his feet to bring his children closer. A man who might finally give Lily a reason to look at him differently. Victor strikes the deepest truth Kane has been trying to bury. Kane doesn't just miss his kids. He's terrified he no longer deserves them. And in that moment, Victor's offer becomes a lifeline in open water. But the deal is also a debt wrapped in elegant paper, because the price of it is Phyllis Summers, colleague Kane has been standing beside in a game that has already gone too far. Kane knows Phyllis isn't naive. She stepped into the AI battlefield with the pride of someone who believes she's smart enough to outplay everyone, ruthless enough to survive anything. Kane stood next to her not purely out of loyalty but because he saw opportunity to. Still, there was an unspoken pact between them. A shared understanding that they were moving together through the gray zone. Betraying Phyllis isn't as simple as switching sides. It's choosing to push someone over a ledge. Kane fights himself in long, brutal hours that feel endless. He asks whether he has any other choice. He wonders whether Phyllis deserves this kind of punishment. But every time he pictures Maddie and Charlie, every time he remembers Lily's guarded eyes, his chest tightens. Somewhere inside him, fatherhood outweighs everything else. And that is the cruelest part. Sometimes people betray not because they hate, but because they love something else more. In the end, Kane accepts the agreement without ceremony, signs it with silence. He doesn't announce it. He doesn't confess it. But from that moment forward, every step he takes changes direction. Kane begins executing the plan with the careful restraint of a man who knows that one mistake will cost him everything. He approaches Phyllis's AI system with the same cooperative face he's always shown, as if he's still firmly on her side. But inside, he watches for weaknesses, for cracks, for the tiniest points where her control can break. He doesn't destroy it in a loud, obvious way, because that would trigger Phyllis's instincts immediately. Kane chooses something more dangerous. He plants small faults, invisible fractures, making the AI grow unstable as if the sickness is spreading from within. He designs subtle failures, gaps in the logic, irregular responses just enough to push Phyllis into doubt and stress, without giving her a clear enemy to target. Kane understands her psychology too well. Phyllis always believes she owns the game, and when something goes wrong, she will blame an outside attack before she ever suspects the man standing beside her is holding the knife. Kane gathers information like a patient hunter. He collects traces, records, and proof that can show Phyllis manipulated the AI, used it beyond ethical and legal limits. He knows Victor won't settle for suspicion. Victor needs certainty, something that can crush Phyllis with no room for denial. Every file Kane secures is another step closer to Phyllis's collapse, and another step closer to the reward Victor promised. Yet what hurts Kane most isn't the work, it's what it turns him into. He hears the quiet voice inside him asking, when did he become someone capable of betraying this easily? When did he learn how to smile at Phyllis while assembling the evidence that will bury her? Kane tells himself he's doing it for his family. But the more he repeats that excuse, the heavier his guilt becomes. Because a noble reason doesn't erase wrongdoing, it only makes wrongdoing more complicated. Meanwhile, Phyllis begins to feel that something is wrong. The sensation doesn't strike like a sudden shock, it creeps in like a thin hiss behind her neck. The instinct of someone who has lived close to danger for too long to ignore shifts in the air. She watches her AI behave strangely. The responses are off. Patterns glitch. Data chains refuse to follow the models she created. She grows frustrated, tense, but also strangely energized. As if the instability itself is a challenge she must conquer to prove her supremacy. Phyllis suspects enemies. She suspects Newman. She suspects Victor. She suspects shadows beyond every closed door. And when someone like Phyllis can't identify the hand working against her, she starts to lose control. One thing she fears more than anything. Kane watches her unease deepen and something inside him wavers. He realizes Phyllis isn't only a target in a scheme. She's a human being, driven by ambition, scarred by old wounds, terrified of being defeated. Kane has seen her fierce enough to frighten people into silence. But now he sees her as a woman clinging to power the way someone clings to oxygen. That realization sparks a bitter mix inside him: pity, discomfort, and self-disgust. He wants to avoid Phyllis's eyes, yet he has to stay close so she won't suspect him. He wants the whole thing to be over, yet he's terrified that the ending will carve a permanent wound into his conscience. Kane begins living two lives at once, one in public where he's still the trusted colleague, and one in darkness where he's carefully ranging betrayal. Everything reaches its final stage when Kane creates the perfect lock to neutralize Phyllis's AI. He doesn't shut it down completely all at once, because Victor needs it disabled in a way that proves it was dangerous and misused. Kane finds the weak point and forces the system into instability, making it expose its vulnerability, making it look like something that can be controlled, hijacked, abused. And when the AI begins malfunctioning, Phyllis becomes easier to pressure into mistakes, easier to corner into revealing additional traces of wrongdoing. Kane knows Victor is waiting. Kane also knows that once he hands over the final evidence, there will be no way back. When Kane delivers the last piece to Victor, it doesn't happen with drama or celebration. There's no applause, no grand victory speech. It feels like an execution performed in silence, an invisible handshake that seals another person's fate. Kane completes the betrayal with chilling precision. He gives Victor exactly what he needs: documents, trails, proof, every detail strong enough to turn Phyllis into the undeniable villain of the AI scandal. And the reward arrives just as Victor promised, quietly, efficiently. wrapped in the stability Kane has been starving for, the financial security for his children, the influential position, the escape from Jack Abbott, the possibility of standing upright again. But when that door opens, Kane realizes he doesn't feel lighter. The relief he expected doesn't come. Instead, a cold emptiness settles in, as if he has traded away a piece of himself for something he still might not be able to hold. Because family cannot be purchased through a deal. A child's love cannot be guaranteed by money. Lily won't return simply because Kane has a new role and a safer future. Kane may have chosen the path that looked most logical, but he has also stepped into a different kind of prison, a prison built out of guilt and the fear of exposure. He knows Phyllis will never stop once she's betrayed. He knows she will hunt the person who stabbed her in the back. And Phyllis Summers is not the kind of woman who dies quietly. What haunts me most about this story isn't only Kane's betrayal or Victor's calculated cruelty, it's the way people get pushed toward choices that destroy them either way. I keep asking myself, if we were placed between two things that matter most, loyalty and family, could any of us swear we would choose the right one? Kane betrays to save his chance of being a father, but the cost is peace inside his own soul. Victor manipulates to protect Newman, but the cost is dragging more lives into the mud. And Phyllis, whether she deserves punishment or pity, is drowning in her own ambition and terror of losing control. In Genoa City, people don't always collapse because an enemy beats them, they collapse because the person they trusted most quietly removes the ground beneath their feet. And when I imagine Phyllis sensing the wrongness, feeling the shift in the air yet unable to name the traitor, it breaks something inside me. It's the kind of fear that feels personal, being hunted by darkness, only to realize the darkness has been standing right beside you all along. Kane believes he has ended the game with a silent victory, but in truth he has only opened a darker door. Once Victor has the proof, once Phyllis's AI is neutralized, once the reward is delivered, the only thing left is consequence. And consequence never follows the beautiful plan of people who believe they can control everything. I don't think Kane will ever sleep peacefully again, because he will always wonder if Maddie and Charlie ever learn what their father did. Will they feel pride or disgust? If Lily looks at Kane and understands he sold someone out for stability, will she ever truly open the door to family again? And most terrifying of all, when Phyllis finally rises from the wreckage, when she begins stitching together the clues, when she realizes the deepest trap didn't come from Victor, but from Kane. Will Kane still be able to run? Or will he be the next one pulled into the darkness he helped create? On our TV Spoilers channel, I always seek content inspiration for each video by compiling short video clips to analyze and offer my personal opinions. This channel specializes in analyzing, theorizing, and discussing plot points in the Young and the Restless series from the perspective of a longtime fan. Through this, viewers can gain deeper, more objective, and more interesting perspectives. Subscribe to the channel to stay updated on the latest news about the Young and the Restless series.